what is your expectation for today or tonight? So I will take our time today because our speaker for tonight is already waiting for us, and we are 15 minutes behind time. So we will just run along straight up. Okay. So what we will be doing tonight, it's of course we all know the topic, right? So there won't be much need for us to start introducing the topic afresh. So far, I believe you know why you are here, you know what you want to achieve. Go post, send a screenshot in the group and let them know, let everyone you know, you can tag them in our group, in our community. Let them know that we have gone live and we are about to get started. Send a screenshot and ask them if and tell them if you're not here, you are wrong. If you are not here live, you are wrong. You ought to be here. So, quick one for those who are joining us today for the first time. I am Ella Obans, and I am the founder of the Very Best Writing and Personal Development Academy of our time, known as VITA-W, and I'm also the host for National Writers Summit. So, if you don't know, this is not a paid program. It's something we do yearly to help to bring writers together and hold their hands while we watch them thrive. So we give them materials, um, engage activities like writers challenge, writers summit like this one. We do some prize giving and the rest of it just to encourage writers. We also engage in coaching, publication, editing, Amazon publication, and the likes. So I need you to understand that you're not here by accident. I always say this. There is a reason you are here tonight, and you will be learning from the finest mind I know in act of storytelling, fictional storytelling. So if you're here tonight, count yourself lucky to be here tonight. So without further ado, let's quickly, before I bring up our phenomenal host guest for tonight, I would like to share her bio with you. So let me quickly run it through. Gloria Ogo is a skilled tutor, editor, and creative writer known for her excellence in storytelling. She's the author of Bullets for Suffer and specializes in crafting engaging narratives in the society. Through Go Edit, she offers manuscript polishing services, helping writers refine and perfect their work. Gloria's expertise lies in elevating the quality of content, ensuring it resonates with the readers while maintaining clarity and impact. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're ready for what is about to hit you tonight, leave a fire emoji in the comment section as we make welcome our speaker for tonight in the person of Ma'am Gloria Ogo. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome. Thank you
Thank
so much for joining us. It's
thank
quite an honor to have you on this stage with me. I do not take it for granted. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation.
thank you so much, Ella. It's
Okay.
a pleasure to be with you um, this afternoon. It's afternoon over here in America, and um, over there in Nigeria, I guess it's evening. So it's a pleasure to be with you all. So my name is Gloria Ogo, just like Ella Obans has introduced. I am a fiction writer. I'm also a poet whose work has traveled across the borders. And currently, I am based in the United States of America. And so far, my works have appeared in journals and international anthologies. About my novels, since like my topic today goes fictional writing and international publications, so I'll be focusing fully about my novels and storytelling. And like many writers, I began simply by writing stories for myself, for my family to read and enjoy. And eventually, I decided to explore like beyond family pleasure, beyond self pleasure, and I pushed the line a bit further and expanded into the Nigerian society. A little bit about my background is that my mom is a literature and English teacher, and before she retired, she was also a high school principal. So I developed my love for writing from my mom and the books in our house library. So since I delved more from self pleasure writing to writing about Nigeria, the society, the issues going on, one day I woke up and discovered that my work has crossed beyond the Nigerian borders, and I now have a global readership. It was an exciting feeling, but was I surprised? My answer is no. I wasn't surprised at how far the reach of my book went, because I was prepared, and it was more about preparation, meeting, opportunity. I know the question on everybody's mind is how could a writing, because I write African literature. So most question you could have, especially for African writers, and besides African writers, like the global writers as well, I know everybody will be wondering, like, how could a writing so rooted in my personal history, in my country's history, how could it resonate with people thousands of miles away? Well, the answer is quite simple. The power of true fiction is not just to entertain, but to connect us and our experiences across languages, culture, and borders. So there must be this connection between your story and your reader. So a true story that cuts across boundaries, goes beyond entertainment, but it creates a connect between your reader. Your reader can find themselves in your story. Your story, for it to have that universal coverage, it must have a universal theme that connects your readers. And here is another truth: why stories themselves can travel far, getting them published, because I know we do have a lot of self-published writers, and amongst these self-published writers there are this small group that do aspire to push beyond the boundary of self-publishing, and they want to get into the international race of getting traditionally published, which is the overlap of my topic today between fiction writing and um, traditional publishing. So here is the truth: why stories themselves can travel far, getting published and recognized internationally doesn't happen by accident. It's not a coincidence. It takes craft. There must be the presence of craft. There must be the presence of persistence, because some people might have this expectation of the one hit wonder. Sometimes it's not your first book that gets you out there, it's not your second book that gets you out there, it's not your third book that gets you out there. Some are lucky their first book does get them out there, but there must be the presence of craft, persistence, and strategy. And strategy is what we are here to talk about, because I know at this state, a lot of us are quite familiar with the crafts, and a lot of us are quite familiar with being persistent in terms of pushing out stories. Um, some push out multiple stories each year. Now, what is the strategy between your craft? What bridges that gap? That what bridges the gap between your craft and getting traditionally published? What is that strategy? So, the power of storytelling, recognizing the power of storytelling is the number one strategy. Recognizing what story can do, what story can do for people, what story can do for the nation and beyond border, what how story connects. Recognizing the power of storytelling is the number one strategy, because that kind of directs the tone of your story. So are you writing a story for self satisfaction, or are you writing a story that would sell? So recognizing the power of storytelling is that difference between writing a story that pleases you and writing a story that will push that border. So at its core, we all know that fiction is empathy in motion. It allows us to step into the skin of another and see the world differently. And when a reader, for instance, when a reader in India encounters a story from Nigeria, they may not share the same history, but they recognize the emotion, they recognize the fear, they recognize the survivor, the desire in your story. Strong storytelling resonates globally and has these elements in common. For your story to resonate globally, there are these elements: an authentic voice. Your story should have an authentic voice. When I talk about authentic voice, growing up, I was quite an ardent fan of James Hadley Chase, and sometimes I do come across some copies of James Hadley Chase novels with the back torn off and several pages missing. But despite the back being torn off and several pages missing, once I read the first sentence, the second sentence, the third sentence, I say, this is James Ali Chase. I don't need the cover of the novel to tell me that it's James Ali Chase. I know the voice. So that is what it means to have an authentic voice in writing. Have a distinct voice that separates you. It makes you unique. It separates you from other writing. So once a traditional publisher sees a distinct voice, they do recognize it. So the common elements books that push beyond the gatekeepers have is: number one, you should have an authentic voice, and you should have relatable stakes. The stakes of your story, whether you're writing about family in turmoil, whether you're writing about lovers who are separated, whether you're writing about characters fighting against injustice, the stakes should connect to our fundamental human needs, because that is why we read. Despite the fact that several readers might say they read for pleasure, they read for entertainment, but beneath it all, the reader is trying to connect to a fundamental human need, be it love, be it grief, be it justice. They are trying to satisfy a fundamental human need. And also, the second thing to consider when trying to hit the market with your fiction is crafting your fiction for global reader. You should have your readership in mind. You should know, who am I writing for? Okay, so now let's talk about craft, the part we can control. Clarity matters. Your reader should be able to understand your story. So you should, for instance, if you're writing about migration, if you're writing about identity, if you're writing about resistance, climate, family, you should be able to understand the genre that you want to tell that story, in which you want to tell that story. Genre also matters, because certain traditional publishers are focused on certain genres, and despite the fact that they're focused on certain genres, they are also focused on certain stories at a certain time. What kind of stories move the market at a certain time? So understanding the genre you are working with do matter a lot, because it kind of streamlines the language, because every genre has a specific trope and it has a specific language, be it speculative fiction, be it fantasy. Are you writing about literary realism? So whatever genre you are focusing will determine how far you can push that gate into traditional publishing, knowing what it's what genre the publishers are looking for. What genre is the hot hits in the market right now? So take for instance, I can deviate a bit by talking about my current work I'm writing. At first, I started off with a plain African American historical literary history. And eventually, I kind of surveyed the market. I kind of said, okay, it seems like speculative fiction is more um, on board when it comes to fiction writing, and I had to modify the genre from just pure historic fiction and modified my story through the lens of speculative fiction, because I surveyed the market and I kind of discovered that speculative fiction was more in demand. So when I talk about understanding the genre you are writing, I don't mean like you should um kind of switch up on your story. You can tell the same story, but what vehicle are you actually using to write that story? So once you determine what sells most on market at the moment, you could help determine the vehicle in which you are using to convey that story. Let me bring this closer home. Like my book, In Blood and War, I wrote about the conflict rooted in the West African history, the Nigerian Biafra civil war, but I wove it through the lens of the universal question, understanding your audience and understanding your genre. Now, I've spoken about understanding the genre that is selling in the market at a certain point. Now I'm talking about the lens of understanding your audience as well. So while writing In Blood and War, despite the fact that it was rooted in the on the past conflict of the West African history, Nigeria, I wove it through the universal question of who are we when survival is at stake? What and who do people become when survival is at stake? It's a universal question which the universal readers can relate to. How do we carry memory and grief across generations? So in my work, I had fundamental questions that shaped my writing, because I considered my universal audience, and I asked the universal questions. Who are we when survival is at stake? How do we carry memory and grief across generations? So these questions, which were my guiding questions while I was writing In Blood and War, spoke to my readers who had never set foot in Africa. And because there were also questions about humanity, so they were very grounded and relatable. So let's talk about pathways to international publication. While I was in Nigeria, I never really gave much attention to being internationally published. But since my arrival in the United States, I kind of like wanted to experiment in that field, despite the fact that I know that there seem to be these rigid gatekeepers to the traditional publishing. And also I was kind of afraid, like, in order to gain entry through the gate of international publication, would I lose my authentic voice? Would I lose my stories? Would I lose myself? So those were questions, those were fears, underlying fears, why I kind of swerved away from international publication. But since arriving in the United States, I kind of studied the market, I kind of studied the dynamics, and I got to understand these factors which I just explained, understanding what is selling in the market and telling that same story using that same authentic voice through those lenses, through the lens of genre, the genre that the publishing magazines, the publishing houses, what genres are they looking for? So you write through the lens of those genres, and also through the lens of the universal question. Know your audience. If your audience is maybe limited to Nigeria, you know the kind of questions that are quite familiar, that Nigerians can easily relate to. But if you're talking about this global audience, just one size fits all, then you need to ask those serious questions, that can those universal questions that can give your work those universal themes that your readers, the global readers, can connect with. So since coming, I have been published in over 25 literary magazines and journals since my arrival in the United States. And the trick, like I kept saying, was understanding the genre the market wanted, and also understanding the universal theme. So if you're thinking about pathways to the international publication for early writers, it might be best to break way through the literary magazines and journals, because once you have this backlog of publications, then it is easy for you to, you know, push the gate a bit wider, because for you to get internationally published, you need to get your story in shape, which we've talked about. And the next part is to get, once your story is in shape, you get an agent. You pitch your work to an agent. You write inquiries to agents, telling them about your work, telling them about the genre of your work, and the themes that resonate within your work. And once an agent is highly interested in your work, the agent will call for your manuscript, and you will sign a contract with the agent, and the agent will pitch your work to the traditional publishers. So that is how it works. Understanding the craft, understanding the genres, understanding the universal questions. Then, once your work is good to go, get pitch it to an agent. Write a letter of inquiry to your agent and explaining what your work is about, the themes explored, and also explaining similar, like, popular works that your work kind of shadows or models, after comparative works that your work kind of model after, or that are kind of similar to what you've written as well. And the agent will sign a contract with you and pitch your work to the traditional publishers. So, like I said, the best way to start off in pushing through is to get published in literary magazines and journals, because when you are pitching to the agent, you can state your publications, you can state that in your bio, where you talk about yourself, who you are, um, what you've what you've published so far, places your works have appeared. So those are selling points that can actually make an agent give you a listening ear. Not only give you a listening ear, but it's kind of a proof. It's kind of like a badge that says this writer is good enough. So getting published through literary magazines and journals is kind of like the thumbs up that says, okay, for this writer to have this number of publications, then this writer is good. And the agent knows that they are making a very good bargain in signing you up. So another method of breaking through that gate is also, while you can do multiple strategies simultaneously. So while you are submitting to literary journals, you are submitting to magazines, also look out for anthologies, look out for contests also, because getting published in anthologies as well is a bonus to your track record. And also looking out for contests. Winning contests is like getting you like all the way up there. It gives you visibility And also it's kind of like the badge of approval as well, to say this writer, the writing, the works of this writer is good, and it checks all the right boxes. So anthologies, contests, and magazines and journals, they are good ways to start pushing that gate open. And once you get these under your belt, they are kind of like a good track record for you to pitch your work to an agent and be like, this is what I have achieved so far. These are all the boxes I've checked, and I am selling this, I am putting forward this current work to you. And the agent reads all this and be like, I think I can take the risk. This writer is a good risk. So what are your submission strategies? Because some of my viewers might say, all these things I've listed, I've done the craft, I've done the genre survey, um, I've done the literary magazine submissions, I've done the anthology submissions, but I am not getting accepted, because a lot of writers are getting rejection letters, a lot. So sometimes we do see writers only announce their acceptances, and for those who have gotten numerous rejections, they'll be like, what am I doing wrong? Okay, now let's look at your submission strategy. Let's see what is not working, because we've ticked the boxes on what is supposed to work. And if these boxes are not working, let's study your submission strategy. Now, before you submit to a literary magazine or a journal or an anthology or a contest, you have to do your own work. You have to research the editorial taste. You have to research what that magazine is looking for. Because I know we all have a backlog of poems, we all have a backlog of stories we've written, and we are just looking for a home to place it. Sometimes submissions don't work that way. You have to first of all look at what the magazine, the editorial team wants, and don't try to force your story to fit in. At a go, you know whether you have the story for that submission or not. And if you're interested in that submission, in that competition, that anthology, and your story does not fit, your story is a circle and you are trying to fit it into a square box, you are certainly going to get a rejection. So we need to study your submission strategy, know what the editorial team is looking for. If your story is a circle and you're trying to fit into a square box, then better write a square story. What do I mean? The lens. What lens are you telling that story through? If they are looking for a sci-fi and you wrote the traditional African literary way of telling a story, and a magazine or a contest is looking for a sci-fi, then you have to review that story. You can retain your voice, you can retain the themes, you can retain the structure, but now the lens through which that story is told, you could modify it, and that way you have a story that meets the speculative fiction submission criteria. So that is your strategy. You have to review your submission strategy, and also you have to write professional cover letters as well. And sometimes a story could meet the criteria of that editorial theme, but probably because it's highly competitive, the contest is highly competitive, or the magazine is highly competitive, they may just decide to pass. So that could also be a reason why sometimes we get a rejection. But if you follow this submission strategy of understanding what the magazine wants, then certainly you are going to hit the right acceptance letter. Also, how do you get to know about where to submit? You could check online digital platforms such as Submitable, Twitter, Poets and Writers, Pen International. Those are platforms you could check to get daily to get monthly uploads on what contest is open and what submission is open. And also, we need to network. You need to network. You need to know what other writers are doing. You need to know strategies. You need to update your strategy, because there is no one strategy that fits all. So you need to find out what is this writer. Look at writers who are doing well, writers who are getting ahead in the game, and try to find out what is this writer doing differently, what path is this writer taking, so you can follow the footprints of other writers as well. So those are strategies you could use to rebuild and push that gate further, because in the international market we have what we call the gatekeepers, and they determine which stories go through and which stories are given the rejection. And what we just studied right now is how to push that gate further in order to get that acceptance. What are the challenges writers usually face in after you get that story, you get your lens ready, you get your craft ready? What are the challenges? Now let's talk about challenges. There are gatekeeping, the invisible gates. For many Western, because you're trying to come from a region where you tell a story a certain way to another region. You are now submitting to another region that has a certain expectation about how the stories should be conveyed to the international world. So that is you have to be very aware that there are gatekeepers in modalities on how the international stories should be told, compared to stories like the way we tell it back home. And also, some writers do face rejection fatigue, and they'll be like, I've gotten so many rejections, I don't think I want to try again. But I have one secret I want to lay out, and that is, all the writers who do post their acceptance do have a backlog of rejection letters they are not posting out there. So it's for you to revamp and come back, and not be like, I think this writer is only getting acceptance, so this writer is better. All writers are good writers. There is no good writing, there is no bad writing. It's all about strategy, understanding what the market needs, and revamping and re-strategizing and retelling the same story, but through the lens of what the market needs, through the expectation of the gatekeepers. So um, what are the other incredible opportunities out there for for writers? Well, for writers, there are multiple routes to get your stories into the global scene, into the traditional publishing, which we've talked about. And once you penetrate the traditional publishing, once you push through that gate, be it your journals, be it your magazines, be it your anthologies, or be it like a complete novel which is published out there. There are various formats in which you could have your books read. It could be the digital platforms, it could be visible copies, physical copies. And also there is this translation initiative, which is bringing works to diverse audience as well, because there are certain audience whose language is not English. So there is also the translation initiative that pushes traditionally published work to wider audience. And also, um, don't feel that stories of certain themes have been overtold, they've been overflowed. There is always a fresh perspective to a story. Like you could see Hollywood, they've retold the story of Cinderella. They've retold it multiple times with multiple diverse lead actors and actresses. So no story ever gets old, but the perspective is always fresh. And also there is the hybrid part as well for writers. In as much as we are aiming to be traditionally published, you could also do collaborative projects which can increase your visibilities, which while you're waiting for that one book to be picked up by an agent, to be picked up, getting into anthologies is also considered global publishing, getting into international anthologies. And also, like, we are talking about traditional publishing, so we are not really going to talk about the self-publishing route, but collaborative projects is also a way to increase your viability. And here is a mindset. Here is a mindset I would like to leave you with, because we are talking about storytelling, we are talking about getting published internationally, and we are talking about the biggest conflict an international writer, especially a writer coming from a different background to the Western world, the biggest conflict we do face is the erasing of our voice in telling the story in the Western way or through the Western lens. We have this biggest fear, which is the erasure of our voice. And some do fall into the trap of no longer telling the African story, no longer telling the story of their roots, and they push more into telling the Western story. But I tell you, keeping your head on your shoulder, and you need to understand that you can still tell your traditional stories, but through a different lens. The lens is what needs to improve. The universal question is what needs to improve, but your story, your voice can still remain the same. The more you write from the truth of your place, the more you write from your culture, the more you write from your experience, the stronger your story stands out in the world. And that is what makes your story unique. If you're looking for that magic that will make your story stand out to an agent, for your story to stand out to the international publisher, it's about keeping the authentic voice, the authentic story. But like the two things I mentioned, consider the lens through which you're telling that story, and also consider the universal questions that are playing throughout your story. Now, let's end this section with a practical checklist, or more like a practical roadmap for writers. And it is about strengthening your craft. There are multiple ways of strengthening your craft. You could strengthen it through workshops, you could strengthen it through writing groups, you could strengthen it through beta readers, having a small group of trusted readers, and asking them for feedback, giving them chapters of your stories and asking them what they think about the story. They are more like test readers, this small group of test audience, on how your work is embraced out there. So those are ways. When I say strengthen your craft, you might say, how do I strengthen my craft? So these are ways of strengthening your craft through workshop, writing groups, through feedback, and also build credits through steady publishing in anthologies, in journals, in magazines. Start small and always celebrate each small win. And also do research what the magazines need, what the editing team needs, and also in order to ensure that your voice or your story do align with their needs and expectation. And keep your auto bio in mind. Keep developing your auto bio. Make sure your auto bio do not remain stagnant. It keeps enhancing. You keep winning and adding to your um auto bio. Network, make connections, attend literary festivals, attend workshop, attend online workshops. And like I said, follow on social media authors who are succeeding, authors who are winning, and watch their footprints, shadow their footprints. And there is no way you can go wrong. Above all, do try to persist. Every story has a global home. No matter if the story is about the oil pipeline spillage in Bayelsa, or is it about whatever it is that relates to your small community. Every story has a global home. The work of the writer is to sending keep sending the story out there until it finds a home. But before it does find a home, do employ the strategies we've discussed in order to make the right fit to find the right home. And just a quick recap: stories do travel when they are authentic, so don't lose your voice in order to fit in through the gate. um, Keep your voice, but watch your strategy, and craft your story in such a way that is accessible to global readers. And international publication is not a dream, it's a strategy, and it's one that when you employ it correctly, you can push through that gate. And I'll close this section with this thought, which is every story you write already belongs to the world. Your task is simply to carry it as far as you can until someone somewhere does pick it up and say, "This story is mine. This story is mine. This writer is writing about me." So have all this in mind, and I do assure you, you certainly will break through from fictional storytelling into traditional publishing. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ella.
That's a lot shared in. And the way you kept to time, like you kept to 45 minutes on the dot. I need that grace. Thank you so much.
You're
Like
welcome.
listening to you personally, yes, personally, I picked so much from your session because I love how you were very transparent in sharing both the experience part and how much work is needed. It doesn't happen in. I love the part where you explain that people get rejection, just that we don't see it online. And that does not mean that they just submitted their entries once and they got it. So they get rejection, just that the only one we get to see online is the ones that was accepted. Thank you so much. I picked a lot from what you said. Don't feel your story has been overtold because there is always a new perspective. That was shocking. Like I was developing on a story. I had to check. There's even a story with the name looked similar, but I was like, this is mine. No, I didn't know that one existed before I started writing it. And I love when you mentioned that. It just felt like you were speaking to me when you mentioned that. And I am very sure that people in the comment section are following. Goody said, thank you. You said, no story is oversaturated. Your perspective is always fresh. To get published internationally, you need to pitch your work to an agent. So I am very, very much grateful that you emphasize on the need for us as writers to learn how to speak better. Because sometimes we feel like being a writer is enough, but it is not. You have to learn how to sell yourself. Sometimes you may be called to come for an oral interview. So if you don't really know how to pitch yourself, you may have an amazing work, but you will lose a chance of having it published by a traditional publishing house. Thank you so much, Miss Gloria.
Thank
It's
you,
quite
Ella.
a delight. I have never learned from you in this setting, and this is an honor. Yeah, I do not take for granted. Thank you so much for um sharing this moment with us and also sharing this robust knowledge with us. I obviously our participants do not have a question because I can't find any in the comment section.
Okay.
But I would yes. So I would like to know if you have any parting words, word of encouragement, warning, caution, anything you want to say as a parting word. maybe one thing you want them to keep in mind.
Okay, so thank you, Ella, and it's been a pleasure to be on your platform and share my knowledge, my experience. So, one parting word for those who are watching and those who will later watch is that your story does matter. Your story does matter. So, the number of rejection your work does get is it's not a judgment on your story. It's not a judgment on your writing or a judgment on you as a writer. It's just that your work is yet to find the perfect home. So keep writing.
Doesn't confirm the number of rejection doesn't confirm the quality of your work. Just keep submitting. Thank you so much, ma'am. I am so grateful. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation. I didn't want this session to end. I'm being very honest. I'm like, oh Jesus, there's so much information here. I wish everyone would get to watch a replay and see and learn from the best. You know, recently you were not entirely that active online, so maybe some of them do not know the quality of the person seated here. I hope they maximize it. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for sparing us this time. We understand how busy you are, but you gave us another chance to learn from you. We do not take it for granted, and we look forward to more amazing moments with you. Do have an amazing evening, ma'am. Thank you so much, and bye for now.
Bye bye.
Yeah. So everyone, so far we've learned from Miss Gloria. I believe you got a truckload of value. I'm not doubting that. Like, even if you don't, that means you weren't paying that attention. And I would encourage you to go back and listen to this. These are free knowledge. These people we brought on this platform, they don't have time, and they don't just appear anywhere and speak because they have the knowledge. They saw the passion in your heart and they had you in mind. They wanted to see you try. These are people that Miss Gloria is a master's degree holder, and she's published a plethora of her books, which one of it is a lot of it that spoke about what is happening in our society. Much appreciated works that you can't even think of. So I would encourage you to listen again, take notes, and implement. Trust me, writing is not as boring as people make it look. Writing is not as boring as people make it look. People make it look like you're wasting your time. Oh, once you get to a certain age, you will give up. No, it doesn't happen that way, right? There are people making it big in writing. There are people thriving in writing, and there are people who are who have notable results they've achieved from writing. So you also can be part of these people. You can make that history as well. The question is, are you ready? Are you willing? Are you invested? Because it's going to cost you time, effort. She mentioned it here. People have been having their works rejected, countless number. So just understand that anybody you see posting and you're telling them congratulations, they are not lucky. They have tried a couple of times. You may not even be able to believe it when they tell you how many times they've tried. So whether national publishing house or international publishing house, share your work. Like she said, do not think, oh, a lot of people have written about your story or the one that happened in your community, the one that happened, your personal story, or the ones you experienced, the ones you witnessed. Don't say, oh, someone have already written on it. You can never ever overshare, because no story goes oversaturated. So you have to keep on sharing, keep on sharing. With that said, I believe we got value. The next session is coming up by 8. Okay. So once we end the session, quickly, yes, our speaker is already ready. So quickly check the channel. and join in for the next live session. It's a session on how to build your portfolio as a writer. A lot of writers will be like, oh, I have written a number of things, I don't know, da 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 da. How do I create my portfolio? A veteran, a very knowledgeable speaker is coming on board to share with us what this entails. And I hope you are going to maximize that. All right. Okay. So with that said, we will call this session a wrap. If you got value, send a screenshot, take a screenshot now, and post in our group. Let people know that you got value and you were at the session. Please